So what I wanted to do was start. I'm sorry I'm a little late this morning. I got wrapped up in some other readings and like that, so I apologize. I'll begin with the opening prayer in English this time. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah.
Right. Back after breakfast.
Well, a couple of things. Last week, there was a little discussion about, and I believe Rabbi Miri brought it up, but I found and now I forgot the question.
While you're thinking of the question, would you like me to do my poetic?
Go ahead, please.
Today is from Walt Whitman. When I heard the learned astronomer. When I heard the learned astronomer, I was sitting at a lecture, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and the diagrams to add, divide, and measure them. When I sitting heard the astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room. How soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple of things I did remember. Last week, Rabbi Miri mentioned a response in a comment to me. I had mentioned that in one of the earlier passages of in the book of Genesis, Abraham is called Ha'ibri, and I had a little. I could not cite. It was just something from memory, and that they in reference to calling Abraham a Hebrew. And I found the location in the book of Genesis, just to bring up. It's Genesis 14, verse 13. It says, a fugitive brought the news to Abraham the Hebrew, who was dwelling at the terebinths of Mamre, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is one of the first times that we hear the word Hebrew. And so I just wanted to put that to rest, that Rabbi Miri was correct, and we were talking back and forth, but I wanted to mention that the term Hebrew it comes along very early in the description of Abraham, and probably the entire lineage of Jews through the Israelites and everyone else. Yes, Rabbi.
It's been pointed out, I don't know if this was part of your discussion from last week, I'm sorry I couldn't be with you.
Okay.
That whether it's Abraham, Jonah also refers to himself as an Ivri.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when they're in the midst, I'm trying to remember the exact wording, but in the midst of travel, in a nomadic connection,
Mm-hmm.
rather than in the land. because of
Right.
what the word implies. Ivri is to pass from, from I'm a migrant or moving from one place to another, if you will.
Could we use the word nomad?
We did. Yeah,
Yes.
you could use the word nomad. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Michael.
Also, doesn't it refer to a man making a very good cup of coffee?
Oh, oh, that was a good one, Michael. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, well, as usual, because I read back and forth constantly, where did we leave off last week?
Exodus 8, 26. Well, it started 26.
Okay, so we can
Can you repeat that, please? Where?
Exodus 8, 26.
Thank you, Ricky.
8:26.
8, verse 26.
Well, before we do that, I also looked up one other bit of information. One of the things that have come up with swarms of insects, some people have used the term wild beasts also, and other people have said flies. And we're going to get into a series of diseases that can be a specific disease that can be spread by a type of barn fly, of all things, called anthrax. And we're going to be discussing some of these. So Pharaoh, in trying to get rid of all of these swarms of insects, pleads with Moses to get rid of this plague. And so if somebody would like to start on verse 26.
No, I can.
Okay.
So Moses left Pharaoh's presence and pleaded with the Lord. And the Lord did as Moses asked. He removed the swarms of insects from Pharaoh, from his courtiers, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh became stubborn this time also and would not let the people go.
Oh, any comments in those few phrases? Is everyone satisfied with everything there?
Yeah, it's the same old, same old.
Okay. Okay. Yes, please, Don.
Okay, well, I'm on my broken record. We cannot expect Pharaoh to let the people go because God has already told us that he won't. He's arranged it, so Pharaoh will not. So we're going through the motions here. And we know there's no way that Pharaoh is going to concede or even negotiate. His heart has been hard. So we got to go through all the different plagues, I guess, before we get to the next part.
Okay. Yes, I have also noticed that throughout the different plagues so far, and I know it's going to continue, each time Pharaoh comes a little bit closer but never in entirety admitting his wrong, that he is wrong, that what he has done is wrong. He gets a little closer and he starts to say, okay, maybe I should let these people go. And each time he reneges, and it gets worse and worse and worse for Pharaoh. And we had already discussed the distinction with the plagues. Gail brought up a very interesting comment last time that for the first time, Moses starts to say to speak God's words rather than waiting for Aaron to say those words. And so we said that the plague was possibly for the purposes of letting the Israelites know that they were in God's favor because the plagues were not affecting them anymore. And subsequently, the plagues only are for the Egyptians. However, could this also have been, and I mentioned in passing, could this have also been a paradigm shift for Moses? He used to depend on his phrase that his lips are uncircumcised. And all of a sudden, he is now able to very fluently say God's words directly, and not using Aaron anymore for his spokesperson. Any comments about that?
I have a comment, but it's a humorous
Please.
one. So
Okay.
people have serious response first.
Okay.
Approach those, and then I'll add.
Well, any comments? Rabbi, I think everybody is no longer interested in serious.
You got
They
one.
want
You got
the
one.
humor.
You got one. Suzanne has a hand.
Oh, there she goes. Okay.
I just want to say that I never bought into Moses having this stutter problem. Well, you've heard me say this before, but I thought it was just an excuse.
Yes. So what we're talking about, it supports what you had said before.
Yes. And now when he realized that wasn't going to fly with God, well, then, what's the point of trying to be a stutterer? It's just not going to work.
Okay. He could no longer plead the fifth.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Rabbi, you had your comment.
And I apologize, like Suzanne, that if some of you have heard this from me before, that years and years and years ago, we were with the Sunday school up in Michigan. We were talking about this whole story, and I think it was like a fifth grade girl raised her hand and she said, "Rabbi, I know why Moses was slow of speech." She said, "Why?" "Because he forgot how to talk in Egyptian. He'd been away from Egypt for so long, he lost his fluency." So if you carry that through in her very, very astute perception, now Moses has been back in Egypt for a while, and he's gaining confidence in his ability to speak to the Pharaoh. It's cute. It's cute.
It is. Actually, she's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
That's right.
Leave it to a child to teach us the true lesson.
There you go. So, who wants to read, starting with verse 1? This would be Exodus 9, I guess.
Yeah. You want me to continue?
Oh, okay. I don't see David there, so yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Okay. The Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus saith the Lord." There we go again. Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, "Let my people go to worship me. For if you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them, then the hand of the Lord will strike your livestock in the fields, the horses, the asses, the camels, the cattle, and the sheep, with a very severe pestilence. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of the Egyptians, so that nothing shall die of all that belongs to the Israelites. The Lord has fixed the time. Tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land." And the Lord did so the next day. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but of the livestock of the Israelites, not a beast died. When Pharaoh inquired, he found that not a head of the livestock of Israel had died. Yet Pharaoh remained stubborn and he would not let the people go.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments? Yes, Grace.
Well, it's more of a question. Is this the first time that we're distinguishing between, the Egyptians being plagued and the Hebrews being part of the plague? Is it the first instance in the, that's my question. Isn't it the first time that they distinguish between the two groups, that it's geared towards the Egyptians, not both Egyptian and Hebrew?
It starts with the insects or flies. Okay.
I was just wondering because in the commentary it mentions that it's the first instance of which they believe may have been the anthrax.
If it was anthrax, but anthrax doesn't go away in a day. But no, but I'm only kidding. That makes it a miracle, okay, if it is anthrax, because instead of a week or two of illness, it is and high death rate
Itself, it continues to go on.
right, and spreads rapidly. So think of each one of these. We call them the plagues, but they're more than a plague. So far, everything that's happened has happened in a very short period of time. So from natural causes, we'd have to say this is very unusual. And from the standpoint of magic, it is far from that in many, many ways. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I have 2 points. One, in reference to what you just said, Marty. The first is the Hebrews were slaves, and so how do they actually possess livestock is an open question. But you would think that Pharaoh would just confiscate their livestock, having just lost his, but the text doesn't go that far. But the other thing, the more I reread this, the more I realize how really since the flood, that natural calamities have been connected to human behavior. And we know God is the God of the universe and has command of all natural forces. And so God is able to channel that control through the chosen people. But this is an instance where rapid succession of natural calamities are funneled through Moses, and it's still connected to human behavior, as if human behavior is responsible for what happens throughout nature. I'm stumbling here because I'm not a theologian, but I just rereading this text again. I'm realizing how natural calamities are locked into human behavior right from biblical times, but not now. We don't see that now. Certainly, we saw it was evident then. So I'll shut up.
Anyone want to comment on what Don has just mentioned? What about?
I'll add a different,
Okay,
not related to Don's, but a linguistic thing.
Please.
One of my professors at the rabbinic school, we had a class specifically on the language, the poetry, and the
Hmm.
The literary, what's the right word? The literary style of this particular part of Exodus. And Hanan Brichto maintained that in this particular phrase, as an example, where and Ricky read, "Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews," but Brichto maintained that that's a mistake, a scribal error, that shouldn't have been Ha'ivrim, that should have been Ha'avadim, that should have been God of the slaves, because the end of the sentence specifically, in a literary combining the two verbs, or the two terms, that that this is, thus says Adonai, the God of the slaves, let my people go that they may serve me, which is off, that they may be servants to me and not slaves to you.
Right.
So there's just there, one of the beautiful things about study of Torah is that you can approach it in so many different ways, including a specific linguistic and literary analysis. And just every time that you look at it, you see something new.
Good point. Very good point. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I want to add to your Rabbi Norman, to the issue that the word Eved or Avadim are also worshippers.
Mm-hmm.
So here you play the two things. It's not only the slaves, but those that are worshiping me, or they worship me. And I always ask myself if what kind of worship took place while they were slaves, while they worked Pharaoh. And because there is so much organization there, and they knew that they have to go and sacrifice. So I always feel that some type of something was happening in that place that that we knew how to worship God, which means that we knew about God, or I don't know, something like that happened. The other thing I wanted to mention about this plague is that Pharaoh sent someone to check up if we also got the plague or not. He sends Vaishlach, and he sent someone to check that out, because he starts thinking perhaps that, this is only for us. So anyway, those two things came to my mind.
Okay. Those were also very good points. Any other comments? Well, one of the things that I also spend some time for diseases of the cattle, there are numerous Egyptian gods that are being challenged at this point. The Egyptian gods associated with bulls and cows include Ptah, Minivis, Hathor, and Ammon. And so little by little, the different Egyptian gods are being challenged and shown that they are unable to prevent what God says will happen, and what God does to these various in these various plagues. But any comments about the concept of worshiping? God. God is saying basically to Pharaoh that I don't want these people to worship you. I want them to worship me. And if you put yourselves in Pharaoh's shoes, how would you feel? Anyone? Would that be a direct challenge, an insult? What would you, to get things rolling, just a couple of words. Don had his hand up first, and then Suzanne.
Well, Pharaoh would feel just like Trump did when he lost.
Okay.
Well, I think maybe he may have been in some sort of fear. And as human, we directly react to fear with anger. So I sort of feel that if I was wearing Pharaoh's shoes at that point in time, I'd be in fear.
Yeah, I think it's a combination.
Yeah, it's a combination of the two. Yeah. Fear and anger is his ultimate response at that point, I believe. But what do I know?
Okay, well, it's okay. We're just taking a guess. Suzanne, you had your hand up before, please. And then Larry.
I just wanted to say that Pharaoh was raised with the attitude that he was like a god.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand him coming from the viewpoint, how dare anyone question me or suggest that some other deity be worshipped other than me, and be very indignant about the whole thing and enraged and wanting to put his foot down and to make sure that he's in control. Of course, he's not in control against God. But that's another thing. But sure. I can see his I can see his arrogance coming through.
Good point. Good point. One of the things that I often think about when I read these plagues, when we speak about leaders who are like this, or even ourselves, that in many ways are like this. Once we have a mindset, we don't want to hear anyone else's opinion. We can't accept a difference in thinking. Think of what can happen to individuals who run into this type of behavior. It can be it can lead to unanticipated consequences. Yes, go ahead, Larry.
As we read this, we just came to the fifth plague. How can we look at this and in our minds not think we know that there are 5 more plagues to come and that there's 10 plagues? And if we're reading this as though for the first time and we don't know what else is to happen, then we see the enormity of this, of people whose water was tainted, the grains in the field, their animals. I mean, what do they eat to survive? Are they going to get manna from heaven? I mean, this is major, and we don't know what is coming next, unless we've read ahead.
Exactly. Well, we have in years past, but the point is that if you read it as if this is the first time you're reading it, right? It things are building up quite a bit. That's right. You want to say to Pharaoh, you want to shake him and say, hey guy, wake up. But what would have happened if Pharaoh conceded right away? What would have happened? Put yourselves now in the minds of a slave. because would all the events occurred, he would have said, okay, go out in the wilderness and pray to your God, and I expect you back, and I'll give you a warm hug when you get back. What would have happened?
I don't know if there would have been a big difference after 5 plagues, 7 plagues, or 10 plagues.
Historically, there have been many explanations. I mean, if you pollute the land with blood and frogs, they're going to rot. You're going to get flies. You're going to do this, that, and anthrax can come about a little easier, and so it takes away from all of these things wind up taking away from the basic miraculous of these events. They're occurring in a very rapid sequence of time. So yes, Don.
That's what makes me feel so sad for Pharaoh, because he might have conceded, but he wasn't allowed to. By the time they got to the lice, he may have said to himself, "That's enough. I'm convinced. I'm gonna worship your God," but he wasn't allowed to. And so, to me, he's a terrible victim. And I wish I could be convinced otherwise, but I just see him as the fall guy who just didn't have that opportunity. He just couldn't.
Interesting. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I want to make a parallel to our lives. We have a bunch of people that don't believe that COVID is bad. So they don't want to get vaccinated, and they demonstrate and so forth. So after COVID, we have Delta, and they still don't want to get vaccinated. And then we have Omicron, and they don't want, and now we have a super Omicron. Is that going to convince the people to do what they need to be doing? That's what came to my mind. How many things need to happen?
That's right.
Let's hope it's not 10.
There you go. That's right. No, but seriously, there's a few months ago, we just mentioned the song "How Many Times Must a Man Walk Down?" Before we call him a man. It's the same concept. It's part of human nature, and what I think we're being asked to do personally is to rise above the animal instinct in us. We can change our ways if we set our mind to it. And in our religion, we do have devices that we can atone and change our ways, recognizing that man is a unique animal. There are no other animals that can easily do that. So, it just is an interesting aspect here. One of the things, there's a little parallel. I'm sorry I'm bringing these up, but Sue and I are currently viewing we're on a binge of The Crown, okay, about Queen Elizabeth II, and how she enters into the monarchy. She's head of the Anglican Church. She has to uphold everything from a religious standpoint according to the church. She has the ability to be a politician, but she is ruled by the politics of the land. Is sort of set up to take, to have some sympathy for the queen, because she's being pulled in so many different directions and can't behave like a normal human being. We're sort of set up to feel sorry for her in that story. And I'm wondering about, is it fair to say maybe we should feel some sorrow for Pharaoh for not being able to change his ways, for not understanding what he is doing is wrong, because this heads into the defense, the legal defense system. Okay, should we feel sorry for someone like that? Somewhere, I think we're going to be talking about it as we move along in this journey through, as after the book of Exodus, to feel sorry for the other, to feel who does an injustice as
I
well.
don't think so.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Marty, I would just I have a few things based on what you said. The last thing first. Firstly, I just don't think so.
Okay.
I think since the beginning of time, Jews have been giving a free pass along the way that lead up to the present. Jews being a soft target for different things, but that's a whole different discussion. I would like to talk about at a major meeting. But anyway, then the last thing, the last before this, the animal instinct in us. I believe personally that there has to be a very major separation between an animal and a human being. It's completely, I think that's a wrong, in my opinion, it's not accurate or a good thing to combine the human being and an animal completely. Absolutely, there's no distinction. They're two different things, a human being and an animal, and for a number of reasons. And then the last thing I want to, it's been working on my mind for the past couple of minutes, and I just want to go back to May for a moment. And it was a study of the Torah. In my opinion, the Torah has to be approached a very, very high respect and a very high regard. And I'm not going to go any further than that. I'm not going to go any talking about what you do when we start. And I was thinking about that. I should say that, because I'm looking to start a big to do about anything. But that would be my comment, is the study of Torah has to be studied with a high regard of respect. And that's it.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Rabbi.
I guess coming back to the stream that Don and Marty have been working on here, that and I think it's Primo Levi, but I'm not sure. It's not Wiesel, but one of the major writers after the Holocaust developed a theme, picking up on a number of biblical stories as well as other historical stories in the lives of the Jews, that there's this theme that for the sake of teaching or inspiring or motivating one person, God is willing to let millions die, whether they're Jews or whether they're Egyptians or whether they're other Russians or whatever. But throughout history, and it's a very cynical, sardonic
It is
theme.
Primo Levi, yes.
Is it Primo Levi?
Yes.
Yeah. That and I'm starting to see, that we could approach it this way also, because as I mentioned previously, the Midrash sees that this whole experience not only provides freedom for the Israelites, but it provides the life lesson for Pharaoh so that he can save the citizens of Nineveh. He's already lost all of his people to these occurrences. He's not going to let it happen anywhere else. And there's that kind of theme that I'm sorry, and given again what Don was raising, what you were asking, things like that.
Yeah, sometimes by looking at someone, it's short of forgiveness. It's trying to understand their way of thinking, as opposed to
And it's
just
not
giving them
teshuva.
absolution.
It's not
Right.
forgiveness, absolution, repentance. It's not that. It's for better or for worse. And it's parallel to like Last of the Just kind
Right.
of issue. Is that person, by virtue of what he or she does, this is by virtue of what he or she does against God's will.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so yes, Rabbi Mary, you had your hand up.
What came to my mind, Rabbi Norman, is the thought of rabbis with the midrash of after they cross the sea and all the Egyptians die, and Miriam starts singing and dancing, and God starts crying because his children
My children are dying.
drowning.
My children are drowning.
Yes.
Right.
Good point.
So
Very
there
good
is
point.
the concept of
Yes. Yes, Don.
Thank you, rabbis. That's very helpful. I have no doubt that these events occurred historically, and therefore it's inevitable that they had to be fit to human history. Whenever I read these, the first thing I look for is some element of compassion in the story, some element of forgiveness or compassion or love. This is all bare knuckles. There's none of that in this this episode. And so I have to believe that these events actually occurred and there's no wiggle room, they have to be fitted. So maybe, the compassion will come later, but not right now.
Good point. Good point. Any other comments, thoughts, ideas? Okay. Ricky, do you want to continue reading, or David? Either one.
Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, each of you take handfuls of soot from the kiln, and let Moses throw it toward the sky in the sight of Pharaoh. It shall become a fine dust all over the land of Egypt, and cause an inflammation breaking out in boils on man and beasts throughout the land of Egypt. So they took soot of the kiln and appeared before Pharaoh. Moses threw it toward the sky, and it caused an inflammation breaking out in boils on man and beast. The magicians were unable to confront Moses because of the inflammation, for the inflammation afflicted the Egyptians, and the magicians, as well as all the other Egyptians. But the Lord stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not heed them, just as the Lord had told Moses.
Okay. I almost forgot. Somebody once before mentioned something about camels, that they were not domesticated until a much later time in Egypt. And yet it has been found, there have been found statements made in Greek literature, as well as archaeologic finds showing that the camels that were south of Egypt, what we would call today, in Nubia, okay, let's call it biblical Nubia, they were aware of those, and it was probably so that it was described in other neighboring regions. And so it is possible for some of the Egyptians to have camels at this time when they date the different artifacts. So just to, this comes from an exegesis exegesis in the Sarna edition of commentary on the events. So, and he has a very lengthy discussion of that for those people who are interested. I don't want to take up a lot of time with that. So, any other comments about what you just read, Ricky?
No.
Okay, so you have.
Well, is this the first time the Egyptians are specifically mentioned as being afflicted? It seems to me, I don't remember that they specifically said earlier, that the magicians were also cursed with this, whatever this one is.
Yes. But it just says, the Egyptians too, but this has happened from the flies onward.
Well, I didn't remember them being specifically mentioned. That the
Yes,
Egyptians-
they don't affect, it's
Yeah.
specifically for the Egyptians. It doesn't say the Israelites too, but where the earlier ones were for both.
No, what I'm saying is it's constantly saying that the Egyptians are afflicted, but this is the first time that I remember them saying the magicians and the Egyptians.
Right.
Were
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
misunderstood.
this is the first time the magicians are identified.
Included, right. So any other questions, comments? I'm sorry, I misinterpreted what you said, Ricky.
It's okay. I misinterpret what I say a lot.
Okay, me too. Any other comments about this? Okay.
All right. The Lord said to Moses,
Please,
early
yes.
in the morning, present yourself to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go to worship me. For this time I will send all my plagues upon your person and your courtiers and your people, in order that you may know that there is none like me in all the world. I could have stretched forth my hand and stricken you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been effaced from the earth. Nevertheless, I have spared you for this purpose, in order to show you my power, and in order that my fame may resound throughout the world. Yet you continue to thwart my people and do not let them go. This time tomorrow, I will rain down the very heavy hail, such as not been in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. Therefore, order your livestock and everything you have in the open brought under shelter. Every man and beast that is found outside, not having been brought indoors, shall perish when the hail comes down upon them. Those among the Pharaoh's courtiers who feared the Lord's word brought their slaves and livestock indoors to safety. But those who paid no regard to the word of the Lord left their slaves and livestock in the open.
Okay. Any comments? None? What about timing?
What about it? It says tomorrow. This is going to happen tomorrow. Well, they also,
Okay, so it's a weather forecast.
yeah, so
It's a weather forecast, but it is a little bit more than that.
Right.
This whole process is really, in a way, trying to show that the Lord and Moses and Aaron seem to be working almost as a triumvirate together. Moses and Aaron do what God tells them to do, but they are the ones that are directing these plagues. And I kind of like the idea that the three of them are working together. And it's a little bit more than just I order, the Lord orders, and you do. it's the working together that I think is important here. It's part of the important message here.
Good point. Any other points about this? Yes, Don.
There's very good geological and archaeological evidence that there was a event around that time in which some sort of meteorite shower or other stuff coming down from the sky, either the earth passing through some material that would cause all those plagues to happen in exactly that sequence. You know, the water would turn red from iron component, from the dust, the frogs, the amphibians, the insects, it all multiply in response. And then the hail would actually be not probably frozen water as we know hail. It would probably be micrometeorites that would kill livestock and people. And as I said, there's very good evidence now that there was exactly that sort of event at that time. So that's why I'm sure this all happened. I have no doubt at all.
Well, there's another archaeologic discussion that deals with huge eruptions of volcanoes in the Mediterranean area. And there's also evidence of that. And however, is it important to make it a scientific? Is it very important to make it very scientific? What does that do to the basic story?
I think it undermines the story completely.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the story is God's omnipotence. And if the scientific, well, you could say that God caused the volcanoes to erupt or God caused the meteor to fall or whatever, it takes the drama out of it. You know, it's like, oh, so a meteor landed on Earth and all this shit happened, you know. I don't know. I think it would just totally erase the spiritual value. That's not quite the word I want, but
No, but that's a good way of putting
the
it.
spiritual value of the story is that, you know, one at a time, God's doing this, and it wasn't just some, you know, laws of nature, because then you could be a deist.
Okay. All right. Michael, yes. And then Don again.
By keeping it somewhat scientific, doesn't that remove the religious aspect of it?
That's what Ricky was saying. Yes.
Oh,
Exactly. So you have to be very careful. It's okay to show, you know, this is one of the potential pitfalls. I have a friend who's very deep rooted in science, and he has no room for religion. And the problem he has, he doesn't understand that science can say who, what, when, where, how,
Not why.
but never why. That is something, and there you need philosophy and you need spirituality to help answer that question. So anyway, Grace has her hand up, and then Don.
you need Torah to answer that question.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, Grace.
Aren't all the answers in Torah? Well, you know.
That's what Michael's getting after. That's
Well, yeah, right. Well, because I read the commentaries, and I thought this even prior to the notes, isn't this the first plague that says, okay, so if you don't get your people and your livestock out of the way of what I'm going to do to the land this time, you know, people are going to die. So it's the first instance where people's lives are threatened in the plagues. and people actually do die because they've survived the frogs, they've survived the blood, they survived the dust, they've survived the anthrax. But, you know, some of their livestock has been lost, but their lives themselves of human is now threatened. Is this correct?
Yes.
All right. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
And
okay.
some did indeed hide,
Yes.
take shelter.
But
Right.
it's an interesting play here because if you put yourself in the shoes of the Egyptians, you suddenly realize that they are looking at it, well, they're still protected by their gods. You know, they may not be totally convinced yet. And so they're not necessarily going to heed this word. Okay, Don had his hand up, then Suzanne, and then David.
Coming back to the original question, first of all, I count myself as a committed, faithful believer in God. And I talk to him all day. He never listens, but I still talk to him. I really believe that the Bible, which is witness stories, has to have a basis in actual history. Otherwise, it might as well be a novel, you know. It might as well be a moralistic novel, which I don't believe it is. But I think I don't shy away from asking a lot of stupid questions because, you know, we've learned a lot over centuries. And so I really think stories like this have a firm basis in reality, but they also have the spiritual and moral content that need to be discussed. Otherwise, we're just savages.
I fall into the same category as you, Don, because I have had a very strong science background, and then but there comes a point at which you have to say, is that, I hate to quote Peggy Lee, is that all
There
that
is.
Okay. Anyway, I forget. I know Suzanne, David, and then Michael.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Grace was saying. The plagues can kind of be looked at in three groups, with the first ones being plagues about comfort to people, you know, affecting their comfort. And then the next group affects their possessions. And now this last group starts with death. The ones coming are the death plagues.
Good point.
So I wanted to add to that. And like some of people here, I too have a strong science background, but for me, God invented science. So.
No, that's true. That's good. That's a good statement in and of itself.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yeah, I think I want to speak in support of what Don has been trying to say. I don't think it takes anything away from the scripture to try to find some historicity to the Exodus, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do that. But there are a couple of points. One, as Don was pointing out, the Minoan eruption in what is now Santorini is something that could have taken place around the time. And the other one is, which particularly interests me, are the plagues of darkness. Now, God said that there would
We're
be
going to get there.
days of darkness. And of course, the day at the time could have been used as an age, or it could have been used as a minute. And so there have found a series of total eclipses of the sun that took place that were visible in
Mhm.
the Egyptian part of the world, either almost total or fully total eclipses that might have taken place at that time. The emphasis on might have. But I think it adds something to try to find some historicity to this. I don't think it subtracts a thing. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I should have said has a potential.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Okay, Rabbi Miri, and then is that your sewing hand or your hand up? Okay, okay. So Rabbi Miri and then Ricky.
I just want to remind, this is my view, okay? And I'm not alone. The Torah is our story, not our history. The Torah is a mythology of the Jewish people. That's how I see it. It's like the discussion about who's God, what's God, and so forth. So we have to hold our own belief if scientific knowledge is behind it or not, or historical information is behind it, or whatever we believe. Personally, I'm going to say it in a very rude way. Who cares? It's a good story.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you. Good one. Okay, Ricky and then Michael.
Just real quick, I mean, to back up what we're all saying here is how many cultures have the story of the flood? I mean, so there must have been a flood. I mean, it isn't just a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something clearly that happened if so many cultures have the same storyline. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And Michael.
I believe that Albert Einstein was an atheist, and he did not believe in God. I think that is the case.
No, I thought that he was a very religious man.
Yeah.
He was an atheist.
I don't think he was an atheist, Michael.
No.
I think so, yeah.
He may have been agnostic.
Research that. I would research that. And
Okay.
he was, so the information that I have is that he was an atheist. And then I would ask Rabbi Miri this question: what is God's purpose?
In the story? What do you?
God purpose in what? In the story?
In a general way, what is God's purpose?
It's a good question, but again, I'm going to parallel this in a very childish way. When you read the story of Pinocchio or Snow White or so forth, what's the purpose of the magic that happens there? And that's something that you can believe or not, I don't know how to answer that directly, Michael. I don't know if there is a purpose. Torah means teaching. So I would go into that direction. Teaching us something.
Okay, Rabbi.
I'll try to give an answer to Michael's question. The traditional answer would be God's purpose for us is the quote from Genesis, "Na'aseh Adam b'tzelmeinu," that I want to make and inspire human beings to be godlike. That's God's purpose. Okay, I've created the world. I've laid out good and bad, dark and light, whatever it is. I want human beings to aspire to be godlike in the decisions that they make, in the lives that they lead. I would say that's the traditional response to that question.
And so I would ask you this, thank you, Rob. And so what is our purpose to God?
That's
Again, traditionally, it is to affirm God,
Mhm.
not to to get into the question about science and and knowledge versus belief. It's not to know God, but to know that there is a God and to affirm that there is a God in the world and in our lives.
And we experience
Thank you.
God.
And
Okay,
right, and we
thank you.
experience, right.
Michael, there are two books that you might want to look into: is Men Looking for Searching God, and
Heschel.
God Searching Men of Heschel.
Yes,
And it has been a big question.
excellent,
Yeah.
excellent.
Thank you.
Now, thank you all. Now, I think, I know there are a bunch of hands that are up, and I've lost my sequence in my mind. So I don't know if Don was up first or Suzanne, and then David.
Go with it.
Okay, ladies first, and then Don. Okay.
Okay, I wanted to say that God, in my opinion, that God wanted a human family, and that's us. And we've made some mistakes along the way, starting with Adam and Eve, and it's going to take a bit of I don't even know what word I want to use, because part of this involves my Christian beliefs. But putting those aside, let's just stick with that God wants the human family, and therefore he created us in his image. So we're his imagers. And his original intent was for us to have dominion over earth, and that he wants to fellowship with us. And I think we see evidence of that when the Israelites are, going through the desert, and he comes to the tabernacle, and his presence is there, and there is a bit of a fellowship, although albeit it's more with Moses than with the people in general, because the people were a little afraid. And I guess I would be a little nervous with all the thunder and lightning, and it's probably a little disconcerting back then. But anyways, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay, Don, and then David.
Well, first of all, Einstein was not an atheist.
Correct.
I've read his science. I've read his many humanistic essays, and one of which is well known is he said the purpose of science is to awaken religious awe. So he was, in fact, saw science as an ingredient to his spiritual religious belief. So strike that statement.
Where
I
did you
agree
get
with you,
that
Don.
from?
I
Yeah, where
agree
did
with you,
you-
Don.
Yeah, Don, where did you get that information that he wasn't?
Right out of his writings. I've read almost everything he wrote. I mean, I can only follow the science down to a certain, I stop at the relativistic equations, but I've read pretty much everything he wrote, and he was definitely not an atheist.
He has many comments made in reference, using God as a reference as well. And so you are correct, Don, in that regard. He's not an atheist. Yes, David, please.
Yeah, this is actually a Wendy hand.
Oh, okay.
Before Wendy talks, there's something that I want to add regarding the purpose of God, because I've always felt that the purpose of God creating humanity is so that he could be here among us himself. And I think that's a very beautiful, lovely purpose. For if we're looking for a purpose, why did God create us? So he could be here among us. And now Wendy.
Good point. Very good point.
And I don't remember the exact story that it was a biblical story. For example, like this village, always, anytime they had to make a decision, they would go up to the wise man and say, well, I have this many horses, and there are too many, should I kill off the others? What should I do? And the wise man says, well, and the guy says, I'm going to kill them off. And the wise man said, all right, well, we'll see if it was good or not. And then somebody else has a question and the wise man says, well, we'll see. Well, the same thing goes, maybe that was God's purpose, was not to really have the purpose, but to watch as the plagues unfolded and to see, like, well, we'll see what happens from this one. And we'll see what as they go on. And as they escalate, we're seeing more and more. And that may just have been his purpose, was to see what the Pharaoh would do and how the Jews would react.
Excellent point. Very good. Thank you. Boy, everyone's on a roll here. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
This is mainly for David. I agree with you that God needs to be among ourselves. But there is in the Torah what it says, and shachanti betocham, and I lived either within them or inside them, which means that it's not something or someone, but it's something that it's inside us, each one of us. And Hasidic thought talks about the light that it's inside. And my Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi put it in a beautiful way, I think. He said, what we have to find out is why, what we have been deployed for. And in my mind, that connection between God and ourselves to operate from that point of view.
Good point. Very interesting. And Grace? Grace, you had your hand up?
I don't think I ever took my hand down is the problem.
Oh, okay.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. I'm playing around in the background doing, I'm pretending to multitask while listening. So,
Okay.
sorry.
All right. Any other comments? Well, I know it's typical every time we do, we jump back and forth in Torah always. And it's good. It's good that we do that because sometimes repetition helps. We are on verse 22. So if somebody would care to read. David, do you have your book handy?
Yes, I do. And here we go.
Verse 22.
And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thy hand towards heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man, upon women, upon beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod towards heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down unto the earth, and the Lord caused to hail upon the land of Egypt. And so there was hail and fire, fish flashing up amidst the hail, very grievous, such as has not been seen in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail smote every herb of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel was there no hail.
Okay, let's stop at that point. Any comments at this point? Well, again, this is what Ricky was getting after. This is another plague that's going to occur, and it's not going to affect the Israelites. That's one. Any other comments?
Yeah, Marty,
Yeah.
I think by excluding the Israelites with these plagues is another way of God demonstrating his power.
Yes. With regard to the different gods that have been in Egyptian gods that have been, if you will, shown up. There's a god, the gods for the boils, for the gods, goddess of epidemics, to prevent epidemics, was Sekhmet, and the Egyptian gods for healing were it looks like Serapis, or Serapis, I don't know, not Serapis, and Imhotep were two gods of healing. And with regard to hail, you had Nul, which is the Egyptian sky goddess, Isis and Seth, the Egyptian agricultural deities, and Shu, the Egyptian god of the atmosphere. So there is a lot at play here. A lot of the Egyptian gods are not being of any help to the Egyptian people. Any comments about any of this? Do you?
Well, Marty?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, please.
I just want to say that this was God's smackdown of these entities.
Okay.
To demonstrate that they had no authority and power over him.
Correct. Very good.
Okay.
But he's still giving the Egyptians with this a way out, not just the hail from the hailstones, you know, affecting them personally, but with regard to crops, because it's not going to destroy all of the crops at that time. If anyone is interested, there are discussions about the different types of wheat versus barley versus spelt and several other types. Emmer is another one and winter wheat that do not become affected by all of this. So the Egyptians are still be given a way out, even with this plague of hail. But as we will read, it's going to be necessary to up the ante to get people to be convinced that God is in charge of all of this. Any other comments?
Well, Marty.
Yes, Michael. Yes,
I
please.
have a question, please.
Please.
But it's kind of indirect. I just want to ask: are you familiar with either an organization or a publication called The Guardian?
Yes.
Could you tell me what that is?
I don't know the basis behind it. I just don't know, but I have seen articles that were published in The Guardian. Okay, I don't know about the publishers or anything like that.
Okay, do you get a sense they may be anti-Semitic?
I have not come across it in what I have read.
Okay.
There may be other articles. I mean,
Yeah,
you can-
There's a specific reason why I'm asking this right now,
Sure.
because I don't want to belay this subject, but the information, I did not have a chance to read anything about Albert Einstein, his life or anything. I haven't done that. So I got this information from The Guardian. Clearly states he was an
Interesting.
atheist. See, he was an atheist. And so what was saying, it kind of, it dawned on me that since he is not, and I'm convinced that he's not, based on our panel here. So that's what led me to ask this question, and I didn't mean
Interesting.
it was not my intent to disturb the conversation at hand.
No, but it's an interesting thing that you raised. Yes, Don. It is very important. Yes,
You
Don.
mean the Guardian newspaper, Michael? The British newspaper?
I just got this on the
Yes.
internet.
Yeah, that's what he would be referring
Yeah.
to.
It's a British
Got it.
newspaper.
Yes,
Okay.
and it clearly states that Albert Einstein was an atheist. That's exactly what I got from when I looked it up right now from the internet. So that's why I got this, because I didn't know unless I read it someplace, and so I want to know if I'm reading is that's accurate or not. And that seems to be that what led me to ask if the Guardian, because I don't know anything about that either. If anybody had any idea if an anti-Semitic organization or a paper, whatever it is.
It's a newspaper, very important newspaper in England.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a very broad liberal newspaper.
They're wrong about Einstein, if that's what they said.
Okay. Yes, Suzanne.
Wikipedia says that Einstein was agnostic. I don't know anything about this Guardian publication, but I do think people get the terms agnostic and atheist mixed up. I mean, they are two different belief.
Very different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I could understand if the author of that article did not understand the difference.
Okay.
One thing they might not have said is that whether he was agnostic or not, and there's nothing wrong with being agnostic, which simply means we cannot know. And he's right, we cannot know for sure. We can believe. But what we do know is that Einstein was an incredibly spiritual man. And the one time at Christmas time, when a group of carolers were singing songs in front of his house on Mercer Street, he came to the door, opened the door, lifted his violin and started to play to the Christmas carol music. And so we do know that the man was intensely spiritual.
So let me read very quickly something that I have here, if I may, Marty.
Okay. I know. Let the rabbi. His hand was up.
Oh,
before,
okay.
And then
Sure.
you can go,
Just
Michael.
briefly,
Thank you.
and not being critical of Suzanne, but I guess it applies to everything that we're saying. Wikipedia is not a legitimate scientific source
That's
of
true.
information.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
true. But I was just
I was put that
Source.
in my assignments when I was teaching college. Is Wikipedia is not a legitimate source to be credited in your papers.
But on the other hand, they don't, I'm not saying they get everything right, but they don't get everything wrong either. So,
Granted,
That's right.
so
but maybe
You have to
neither
be very
maybe neither
careful.
does the Guardian.
That's right.
right.
You have to be
So-
very careful with Wikipedia because it's constantly being edited. And I would suggest if people want to test that, go back to if you have any document from Wikipedia from maybe 5 years ago and look at the same document today, it may be slightly different. That's one of the problems that that type of dictionary has.
And
And
I just want to add one more quick thing. Isaac Newton, who's probably one of the greatest scientists of all
Mm-hmm.
time and mathematicians, he wrote more on the Bible than he ever did
Yes.
on with his, calculus and physics and stuff.
Agree.
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yes, Don.
Right,
Oh,
no,
wait a minute, Don.
Yeah, we kind of
Michael, I
interrupted
think
Michael.
it's Michael who had his hand up, and then Don.
I just want to read very quickly. You'll understand my position, which I
Sure.
don't believe. Anyway, the sentence has been hailed as evidence that the physicist, one of the 20th century's most esteemed thinkers, was an, in big black bold letters, atheist. So this is what I just found.
Wow.
And so they got his and some other stuff there. So that's what I said. And I apologize for being wrong, but it's based on this nonsense, I guess.
Well, we're not saying that you are. You're quoting what was in the paper.
Right.
Yes, Don.
First of all, it doesn't sound like the Guardian that they put atheists in bold. Maybe some other Guardian. But anyway, just a little vignette. Einstein was pals with Immanuel Velikovsky in Princeton, New Jersey. And Velikovsky, to me, is the greatest Jew since Maimonides. He was thoroughly ostracized after his books came out, starting in 1950. But anyway, Einstein, when he died, he used to go for walks with Velikovsky in Princeton, and he had a copy of Velikovsky's Worlds in Collision on his bedside table when he passed away. And Worlds in Collision was, at the time it was published in 1950, was a New York Times bestseller for a year until all the scientists got together and threatened to withdraw their textbooks from Macmillan if they didn't stop publishing this book. Because what Velikovsky tried to do was give evidence that the events around the Exodus actually happened, and he gave a reasoned description of what happened. And so he was pretty much, that controversy went on for 30 years afterwards, and people like Carl Sagan publicly. But Einstein really, he was the only scientist who befriended Velikovsky all through that time. And so to me, that shows there's a thread of Judaism still alive in Einstein, right to the end. So that's the end of my spiel. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Michael.
I found one other thing that this is for Don. This is for Don. Was Einstein really religious? Einstein famously wrote, "Science without religion is lame."
Yes.
I just
Yes.
lost.
Well, that's what so he's supporting what you're saying, Don.
Okay, is lame. Religion without science is blind.
Right.
So that was for you, Don.
No, it's a good point. Those are very good points.
Thank
You know
you.
what, Michael? Michael, I went to in Israel to the university called Bar Ilan, which is a religious university. And the question of people there was, can you be a scientist in the university in a secular manner and wear a kippah and go to shul and so forth? So most of the time, the answer is that it's two different dimensions, in which one is the scientific that you know, and someone made, I think it was David, that's knowledge, and here is belief. And I'm not sure that they can cross each other, that that the volcano in Santorini has anything to do with the story in the Torah. But remember the words. One is knowledge and factual, and the other one is what we use the word ma'amin, emunah, belief. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Yes, David.
Yes, I wanted to add that Father George Coyne, who was the director of the Vatican Observatory and a staunch Jesuit, made a very important point many decades ago. He said there are really two different ways of looking at the world. There is the scientific way, and as a scientist and director of the observatory, he believed that way. But there's also faith, and they are two different yet valid ways of looking at the world. And I just wanted to add that point.
And
But I
since
think that you can hold both. David, you can hold both.
Right.
It
That's what
doesn't
he's
say
saying.
this or this.
Yes.
exactly, that's what, and David is an excellent example of this. Father Guy, who is also of the Vatican Observatory, also said the same thing, that there is a distinction, and there's a reason. In a way, it's a strength, recognizing that both are necessary, because if everything is cut and dry, as science tries to make it, it takes away the beauty of the subject. That's why once in a while you'll see photographs, scientific photographs in an art museum, because people have to be reminded that it is not just cut and dry. If you only look at it that way, you will miss out on one half of humanity. You'll miss out on one half of your brain. So it is very important to have both all the time.
Well,
Yes, Rabbi, the rabbi had his hand up, Michael, and then
Yeah.
Don, then we'll come back to you.
Well, lest the conversation as it draws to a close be based only on the authoritative statements of the Jesuits, and I say that as a graduate of a Jesuit university. Let's also remember that Maimonides,
Yes.
several hundred years earlier, addressed this also. And maybe what we need to do is think in terms of one day doing a seminar kind of discussion,
Good idea.
based on the Maimonides, based on Guide of the Perplexed, based on some of the classical Jewish. Again, not to.
There you go.
Thanks for the photo there. Okay.
There you go.
You know, the Maimonides.
Dr. Ramban.
Right. Okay. You know, but I think the questions are there. They're not total answers. They're possible responses that, whether it's the rabbis or whether it's the Jesuits and the scientists, all provide for us to find the comfort level and the balance between these two responses or approaches to life, whichever way you want to see it.
There is just to underscore that, and then I'll call on Don. There is a debate between Rabbi Jonathan Sachs and I think, is it Dawkins? I think it's Dawkins.
Yeah.
And on this very subject. And for those interested, you can find that on YouTube if you're so interested. Yes, Don.
I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald, who of course is not Jewish, said the mark of high intelligence was the ability to hold two opposing views in the mind without getting upset about it.
It's good.
Right.
And many people, they don't realize it, but they go around their daily lives. That is closer to the truth. Yes, Michael.
You use the term cut and dry. Actually, you can't use it. You have to prove it. So that's what cut and dry really leads to. So nothing is cut and dry until you prove it's cut and dry.
Okay. Maybe I used the wrong choice of words.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, but science is when you deal with facts, facts are not immutable. Okay, they're subject to change as new information is gathered. But if the entire world is looked like as a bunch of pixels, you move away from the true meaning of what is in the picture. Okay, you don't get the true meaning. And I think that's what philosophy and religion supply, that science cannot apply. And then on top of that, you have the emotional response to the picture, you know, and so forth. And science can't explain all of that. So anyway, let's get back. I'm sorry we digressed, but it was a good discussion.
Don't be sorry.
It's a good discussion. But let's go on. Any other comments about the? You want to start reading verse 22?
22, okay.
And we did 22, didn't we?
Oh, we did?
Yeah, we got up
Yeah,
to
I
20,
thought we were 29, but
27, I think.
Oh my goodness gracious.
okay, let's
Well
go
then,
to 7.
okay.
And Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron and said unto them, I have sinned this time, the Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Entreat the Lord, and let there be enough of these mighty thunderings and hail, and then I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer.
Okay, let's stop at that point. Any comments about this, about what Pharaoh is saying? Yes, yes, Suzanne. I'm sorry, I was looking at.
No, that's okay. I find it interesting that Pharaoh said that he has sinned this time.
Mhm.
The fact that he even said he's sinned. And that he and his people are wicked. I'm not, well, of course, I know what happens, but I mean, it still comes across as being fake.
Well, yeah, you know, when we had this discussion before, but it deals with atoning for your sins. Think of Yom Kippur, and what does it mean to turn away, you know, turn from your sins? What does that mean? The rabbis say this all the time at every Yom Kippur service.
Well,
It's not just doing it, you know, saying you're sorry. It's really changing your ways so that you do not repeat that sin again. Am I paraphrasing that?
You are, yeah, that, you know, that what God wants is that we accept, acknowledge our wrongs, turn away from them, and live accordingly. I just want to, I don't want to necessarily change the direction of the conversation, but I just saw the note on here that there are commentaries that punctuate the sentence differently.
Okay.
That Pharaoh says, okay, I acknowledge chatati. I acknowledged that I was wrong this time, but not that he was wrong about his response. Is you continue with the repunctuating, okay? Is God and I are both innocent. It's the people who are evil.
Interesting.
Okay? In other words, I would go along with God. I understand it's the people who wouldn't let me go along.
yeah, I could believe that's what he meant.
Could be.
Pass the buck, pass the blame.
This gets back to our previous discussions, how you want to, punctuate, this is punctuation and interpretation, sure. But I think that's an excellent observation.
Mhm.
So anything else? So do you think that his request plead with, asking Moses to plead on his behalf to God, that all of this, God's thunder and hail will stop, and then I'll let you go? Does that sound familiar in any way?
Yes, I think so. I agree with that much.
Okay. However, there's something here that takes us back to a similar phrasing in the life of Jacob. Okay, when he's pleading with God, he says something to the effect, if you do all of this,
If you will be my God and protect me on my way,
that's right, then I will believe, which is an interesting commentary.
Well, is it then, or is it only then will I believe?
That's right. So you have like a little play going on here. Maybe it's thrown into the mesh that there's a tendency to come up with excuses for your own past behavior, and you're trying to put it on God to do everything for you. That it's not your
Marty,
own
and
responsibility.
you have Moshe doing that.
Yes.
When he's, he has a lot of excuses and he wants proofs. And the people want proofs and they don't believe. And this is interesting because they don't believe and they want scientific proofs.
Well, this is part of the issue. That's what I was hoping somebody would say. Yes, David.
Quick statement, it's like, if you do this, then I will do that, and then he never does it. So basically what he's doing is he's dangling the carrot in front of them and hoping they're going to take the bait, and they keep taking the bait.
Okay. Good point. Good point. Yes, Don.
Well, first of all, human unreliability goes all the way back to Adam. I mean, that was the whole problem. But I had a question about Pharaoh saying, I'm going to let you go. You shall stay no longer. There's another point where the question between let us go for 3 days so we may worship versus let us go. And it's still kind of ambiguous here which one that is. I don't know if anybody can talk about that.
Okay.
Eventually it's 3 days. And the claim is that they had an advantage of leaving Egypt 3 days before, hey, look, they've left and they're not coming back. So when they run away towards the sea, they already have 3 days advantage to the Egyptian. But that might come later, but that's what the 3 days are. And the other one could be that they don't want to worship close to Egypt. They wanted to move as far as possible. But I think both of them go. I always like the 3 days that the army of Pharaoh lost 3 days before start running after them.
Sure. And any other comments? Please, David, I guess if you would like to read on, please.
Yes, I would indeed. Are we at 29?
Yes.
And Moses said unto him, as soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread forth my hands unto the Lord, and thunders shall cease, and neither shall there be any more hail, that thou mayest know that the earth is the Lord's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not yet fear the Lord God. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was in the ear, the flax was in bloom, but the wheat and the spelt were not smitten, for they ripen late. And Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread forth his hands unto the Lord, and the thunders and the hail ceased, and the rain was not poured upon the earth. And when Pharaoh saw what the rain and the hail and the thunders were ceased, he sinned yet more, and hardened his heart, and he and his servants. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the children of Israel go.
Okay.
As the Lord had spoken by Moses.
Any comments? It's a similar theme that we have been discussing, and we sort of spoke about the different grain. But we also had the discussion before that people sometimes, if somebody is going to be even owning a business, it doesn't have to be somebody in politics, but even owning a business, if you don't, you can make a mistake once, make a mistake twice, but if you don't change your way, that mistake will continue to pop its head up every so often. And eventually, if it occurs too many times, it can doom the business. So there are a lot of applications to what we've been reading. Yes, Rabbi.
So every once in a while, I wonder, I don't have an answer, but every once in a while, I wonder, why didn't Pharaoh just look at his advisors and say, cut off their heads? these Moses and Aaron, who needs them? And the phrase here when that Pharaoh says, okay, if you tell God, plead with God to stop the hail and all this, it says it's not I'll let everybody go, it's I'll let you live. I'll let you stay. You don't have to stay here anymore. You can go, but it's not necessarily go take your people and go out, and whether it's 3 days or 6 days or and whatever it is, it's listen, I'm giving you a reprieve. I could have you executed immediately for what you're doing to me and my people. I don't know if anybody ever thought get into that kind of mindset, but I wonder, why didn't Pharaoh from the very beginning just say, get out of here? I don't need to hear this BS.
Yeah, he could have put it that
Certainly
way.
could have.
Yeah. Don?
I'm glad to hear that, Rabbi.
Me too.
Question. But I mean, Pharaoh wasn't the brightest porch light on the block, because he let he let his magicians duplicate the frogs. The frogs had already taken over the kingdom, and then the magicians repeated it. And Pharaoh didn't cut off their heads, so he can't be considered. I mean, he got there by legacy, but he can't be considered the most intelligent of the dynasty.
I think that's my proof that's a good story. If we cut their head, that's the end of it. So I never thought about it, but let's not spoil the story.
Well, doesn't it say somewhere already that God is, that Moses and Aaron and the Jewish people are now in God's protection?
Mhm. But God has allowed Jews and Israelites to die in God's name, Al Kiddush Hashem, before. What's so special this time?
It's a good question. I don't know if anybody can have an answer for a question like that.
I can
They
suggest.
have to keep going and get the Torah. Without that, even the story that goes after that, the being Amskula to choose, there is a continuity of the story that cannot be cut here.
That's
But
right. I think, David, you were going to toss out an answer.
I would like to toss out an answer, and that might be that the Pharaoh might not have been quite as stupid as we give him credit for, and that he might have seen Moses as his rival, and that he wanted not to win the argument by killing Moses, but he wanted to excuse me. He wanted, I guess this is wrong, but he wanted, because he's making sometimes he's making
Oh ye of little faith.
yeah, okay. But anyway, I think that it's possible that Pharaoh saw Moses as a rival and that he wanted to win that argument with him. He had enough respect for Moses that he was going to fight him. He was going to argue with him. He's going to deny his requests, but he was not going to kill him, because I think he probably had too much respect for the man and his brother. Good
point. Good point. Don, did you have your hand up again? Oh, it was Suzanne. It was Suzanne.
It was me. As a possible answer for the question about why, how did somebody say about God not letting the Israelites die or not die?
But God was protecting the Israelites. Yeah.
Right. And I think that the reason is that they have not really been born as a nation. They're very close, but it hasn't quite happened. And I think when they go through the parting of the Red Sea is that time that they could be considered, I hate to use the word born again, but I guess or born, I shouldn't say again. That to me is when they were born as
a people.
As a people.
No, you're right. You're right. Mm-hmm.
It's a good point. Another good point. Any other comments?
Well,
yes,
aren't
Ricky.
they considered a people now when they're leaving? I mean, they were a clump. They were the Hebrews or whatever you want to call them as slaves, and then they're going to be Hebrews as they, are trying to get out. So why are you saying they don't become a people until after they cross the Red Sea? I mean, it seems to me they already are a people.
Okay, Rabbi.
No, they're not referred to as God's chosen people, or as the treasured people, or whatever. They're the Israelites.
Yeah.
But they're not considered the people until it's not only crossing, and it's the Reed Sea, not the Red Sea, until they cross the sea, and until they have had the revelation at Sinai. That's when they start referred to as a
the
people.
Revelation of Sinai, I can see, is definitely
the whole thing reminds me of Dayenu.
Right.
In Dayenu, because
yes. Good one. Well, that takes us up. We have 2 minutes to go. And are there any announcements or comments or? Okay, well, I guess that's it for today. And Shabbat Shalom, and wish everyone a healthy week.